Thank you, Beth.
Yep.
You're all set, Jeff.
Okay, we will call the meeting to order at 6:02 p.m. And you're all set with your visitors, Cindy?
Yes.
Okay. First order of business is approval of agenda. And entertain a motion so we can add a few things.
Windsor County makes a motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you, Doug. In a second.
Orlean seconds.
Thank you, Roger.
Okay, so we're adding two things to the beginning. So A will now be the board retreat. And B will be lifetime membership presented by Doug Jacobs, Director of Windsor County.
Okay. Anyone else looking to add anything to the agenda? All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. Secretary's report. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Chittenden County
Windsor County.
Secretary's report is presented.
I will take Chittenden County as the first, and I will take Windsor County as the second. Any corrections, additions, alterations to the secretary's report? And thank you, Mandy, for getting those out quickly after the board meeting last month. That's greatly appreciated. All those in favor of approving, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Treasurer's report.
Okay. So the data is reflective of through April 2022, or 7 months of our budget, or 58% of the season. So our budget for income is 3.3 million. Monthly activity was only 18K. To date, we are 3.1 million, about 181K short of our expected budget that we set up last year. Overall income is at 95% of the budget expectations. And last year at this time, we were also at 95%. So there you go. Expenses through April. Budget 2.7 million. A monthly activity was 105K. About 33 of that or so came from the trails expense budget. Expenses to date is 1.4. So we're at 52% of our budget expense expectations. Last year we were at 56%. So we spent a little bit more money and probably in grooming up until this point, and that was the comparison year over year. And that's all.
I would entertain a motion to accept the treasurer's report, please.
Windsor County will make a motion to accept the treasurer's report as presented.
Thank you, Doug. And a second.
Franklin, second.
Thanks, Mike. Any,
Mandy, if you didn't get that, that was Franklin that seconded. Sorry.
no, thank you, Cindy. Any discussion?
Patty, I got a question.
Okay.
It's easy. I was throwing my AirPods in and I missed the part. You said 181,000 short
On the income
budget.
side,
That's for
yes.
income.
Yes.
Uh,
And
okay.
year over year, we were 95% last year, 95% this year. So exactly where we were year over year with the income. And most of that comes in later in the year, in the summertime, some of that additional money that'll come in from the grants and stuff like that.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Any other questions?
Who made the motion?
It was
Windsor
Windsor,
Thank
and
you.
Franklin.
Windsor and Franklin.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Hearing no more questions, discussion. Those in favor, say aye.
All right,
Aye.
Any opposition? Thank you. No tabled items, no consent calendar, no old business. Board retreat, Cindy.
Okay, so we are going to have a board retreat this summer. And I have 2 dates for you guys to check and then tell me which ones work best for you. The retreat will take place in the Killington area. I've already found a location and it's available for both dates. The discussion was to have it prior to annual meeting, so I know this is last minute, but the thinking behind it is it will give you guys a chance to review everything prior to annual meeting, including the work that the working group has been doing after the work of the resource committee. So it'll be coming in on a Friday night, and then the meeting is all day Saturday, and then Sunday morning for a couple of hours to wrap up. So the 2 dates, and I'm going to go through each county. I'd like you to check your calendars. So it's in August. It's August 5th and 6th, Friday and Saturday, or August 26th and 27th. Those are the nights. But obviously it's, 5, 6, 7, or 26, 27, 28. So Patty, I know you are already okay with the first weekend is best for you because you have a surgery. Matt, I know the first weekend is best for you, but I'd like to go through Jeff. Oh, here comes Perry. Jeff, which weekend is better for you?
Either one works right now.
All right. Mark, do you know which ones work best for you yet?
Either one works right now.
Okay. Jim?
5th and 6th.
Okay. Lewis? We'll come back to Lewis while he's figuring out how to unmute. Carol's not here. Bruce?
the 5th.
Okay. Pat?
Either works for me.
Hey, you're retired. John Hall?
26, 27.
Okay. Mike Burns?
5th and 6th.
Okay. John, could you do 5th, 6th, and 7th if it was the one that was picked by the majority, do you think? Or do you have set plans?
I have a set plan
Okay.
on the 6 already.
Okay. I was just gonna put a question mark in if you were partially available. No one from Grand Isle Lamoille, they're not here, right?
Cindy, 5th and 6th is good for Addison.
Addison, thank you, Lewis. Okay. Is Julianne's not here tonight? Okay. Roger,
The 26th, 27th for me.
okay. Kurt's not here. He's having knee surgery tomorrow, so I talked to him on the phone earlier, but he's not here. But I didn't ask him about the dates, but I'll follow up with everybody that's not here. And Jeff Halpin's not here, so I'll follow up with him. Wait, people are waiting to come in. Oh, here comes Carmen and Julianne. I'll go back to them once they fully get in here. Doug?
Yeah, what 5, 6, 7's good, Cindy.
Okay. Michael Garber?
5th and 6th.
Okay. All right, let's see. Carmen and Julianne, we are discussing the board retreat in August. I need you guys to check your calendars. Tell us if it's better August 5th, 6th, and 7th, or August 26th, 27, 28. And if you can do either one, let me know that as well. It's basically, while you're looking at your calendars, it's a Friday night, all day meeting Saturday. So you could arrive Saturday morning early if you wanted to do that. And then overnight Saturday night, and then Sunday for a couple hours in the morning, and then you're done.
Okay, I'm good the first weekend.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry I'm late.
That's okay.
No, it's rude.
It'll be reflected in your paycheck.
Okay. See, that you put it that way.
Cindy, what are the 2 days?
August 5th, 6th, and 7th, or August 26th, 27th, 28th. By the looks of it, the majority so far is 5th, 6th, and 7th. Now we will, I'll need to talk with Jeff and Mark about this, but in the past, we have included alternate directors, especially if directors are not able to be there. And also sometimes county trail coordinators, depending on the conversation. So that might come up as well. Right now, we're just trying to get the date and the location set. And then after that, and I'll do this right away because I know this is coming up and this is last minute. We will reach out to see who's going to be additionally invited, but certainly alternate directors, if directors cannot come, I will be reaching out to.
And for Carmen and Julianne, it's going to be in the Killington area. I'm not sure if that was
Oh, yeah.
conveyed or not.
And Carmen, I'm sorry, go ahead.
With my mom, so I apologize. Either date work.
Okay.
Either date work.
Okay, I'll put you down for both, just in case. Thank you, everyone. More information to come, but that's very helpful. Thank you. That's all I have, Jeff, unless
Okay.
anybody has questions.
And we had new item B is lifetime membership.
Thanks, Jeff.
You're welcome.
There's a question from the to for a lifetime membership for Dennis, the outgoing Windsor president. Just a little bit of a rundown on his history here. Dennis has been the Windsor County president for 21 years and has been very instrumental in the overall operation and growth of the Windsor County Snowmobile Club during this time. He served as both president and trailmaster for the West Windsor Moonlighters for 30 years and continues to be one of the lead groomer operators at 79 years old. He was chairman of the Vast Trails Committee for 5 years as well. For those of us that know Dennis, he is probably the most sensible, no-nonsense type of leader that knows how to get things done and keep an organization moving forward even in the most difficult of times. The membership of Windsor County thanks you for your time and requests that the board of directors vote favorably to honor Dennis with a lifetime membership. That's it.
Okay, so I'll describe how this works, unless Jeff, did you want to?
No, you're good.
Okay, so the way that the bylaws read, folks, is that anyone can come and propose to the board that someone receive a lifetime membership, and they read you or give you the information of why that person is being recommended for a lifetime membership. The way that the bylaws read is that it has to be a unanimous vote of those directors that are present that night at the board meeting. Pat Poulin, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So anyway, so Jeff will ask for a motion, and then you guys need to vote on whether you will accept Dennis Lemire as our newest lifetime member.
Chittenden County would move that the vast board approve the lifetime membership for Dennis Lemire.
And a second.
Blue County will second.
Thank you, Carmen. Any questions for Doug?
Do we, as Mike, how do we, I don't know, I mean, yes, 21 years, I recognize that, but I have no idea how that compares throughout the organization. And I don't know if if we give it to one person, is there 20 other people in that 21 years? I don't know. I guess I don't know how that compares.
Well, I can give you a little bit of history on it. It is fairly rare. There are not a lot of lifetime members. But it is usually recognized that they've contributed not just to their own club. I think in most recent history, someone was denied a couple of years ago because it was someone that just did things for their club, but they weren't involved at the county level or the VAST level. And that's sort of a prerequisite of the board in the history of making these decisions on lifetime members. Does that answer your question or help?
And I think Doug pointed out that Dennis has been involved both at the county and at the VAST level in leadership roles.
I know Dennis has been involved as long as I've been around, and that's far too long, so.
Honestly, I'll tell you that anytime there's a new president of a county or a club and they are struggling on how to contain and run a meeting, I said, you got to get your rear end to Windsor County and watch Dennis Lemire run a county meeting, because he does not put up with anything. He follows the agenda. He will shut you down if it's not your time to talk, but he also encourages people. He's very thoughtful. He's just he's been a really great volunteer for this organization.
Cindy, Mike Arbor, can you just tell me how a lifetime membership is distributed?
Yeah, so what happens is basically what just happened here. Doug Jacobs, someone from the county or a club, comes to the board and presents, usually through the county director. And again, the considerations of this board have been in the past that it wasn't just what someone did for their local club, it was also what they did for VAST or the county to affect VAST overall.
No,
that's how
Cindy, Cindy, I mean physically distributed. Like if it's approved, how does he get the TMA every year?
He's on our lifetime list, and so he gets one from us.
And so how many are on the lifetime list right now?
35, maybe.
You don't know.
Yeah, no, well, because people die. So every year because they're usually the older folks, and so they're passing away every year. So, but there's probably not more than 30 or 35.
I don't think we do that many TMAs annually though, do we?
No, I mean, the last time we had a lifetime, I think it was 2 years ago, and it was denied because the person was just local. And I think before that, there wasn't a lifetime, probably 3 to 4 or 5 years since there was one that someone had requested. So there's not that many.
But how many TMAs did we actually have lifetime members last year? Do you remember?
That's what I'm saying. There's like 30 or 35.
Well, I didn't think there was that many.
Yeah.
I mean, there's 35 life members, but I don't think we actually sent TMAs out.
Right. Some of them don't ride.
Right.
Yeah, no, you're correct. Beth just typed in that she can look it up because she can look it up in Salesforce. No, you're probably right. There's probably 12, Pat, that actually got TMAs.
Right.
Yeah, that requested, that are lifetime members.
Yeah, I believe Ruben Gibbs is a lifetime member, and he doesn't ride anymore and doesn't take a TMA.
Yeah.
But one thing to remember, a lifetime member gets a vote at annual meeting. Directly as a life member, not as a club member.
Correct. And that would be coming from a life member.
They're saying they're old and they're kicking off. It scares me a little.
Well, not you, Jim, but yeah. But no, Jim's right that you do get a vote at annual meeting, not affiliate with with any local club.
Any more discussion? Questions?
Hold on, guys, sorry.
I mean,
will-
I have an old list and it's 27 and the last one was Leon Woods that you had sent at one time. I just looked at it. There's 27 total on the list. I'm not sure how many went out, Pat, but 27 on that last one I approved on that list was Leon Woods. If that helps.
And Leon passed, didn't he?
His wife did.
Oh,
Oh.
his wife.
Gail? She was on that list too.
Yeah, she died like last year, I think.
Okay, all those in favor of approving the life membership for Dennis Lemire, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Did everybody vote? Because it has to be unanimous.
Yes, I did,
Okay.
anyway.
Okay, thank you. So that has been approved.
Like to thank the board of directors, and also for those that don't know, Patty Kampanik has stepped up and been voted in to become the next Windsor County president this fall. So thanks a lot, Patty. Good luck.
Like you needed more to do.
Yeah, right.
Thank you, Doug. Appreciate it. Item, which is now C, funding from the state of Vermont.
Just a brief update. So the budget was supposed to be given to the governor last week. It actually hasn't been. So once it gets to him, he has 5 business days to sign or just let it pass or to veto. There's no reason to think that he'll veto. Our money is still in there. And in conference committee, my understanding is that the stipulations have been removed. So we are just on hold waiting for it to get to the administration. And so I can give you the final details if stipulations are going to be put back in, but I doubt they will, because if they were taken out by conference committee, that's a good thing. And so, and again, that's 750,000 for equipment and 50,000 for law enforcement. So I will be letting you know. I'd hope to let you know that it was all done and signed by now, because he could have gotten the budget a week ago Friday, but apparently they haven't sent it to him yet. So we're just waiting. That's all I got.
Okay, any questions for Cindy on that? Next item, fiscal year 2022 budget, actual end of year projections.
All right, so it came to you in your packet. If you got it, it's the colorful sheet. And I'll be presenting this to you at every board meeting now until we get close to the end of the season. Roger likes it when I color code it. So I've been color coding it every year to show you. So when you look on the right where it says end of year projection, if it's green, it means we've done better. If it's pink, it means it's either over or under, depending if you're on income or expenses. And if it's not highlighted, then I'm projecting it's gonna end exactly where we budgeted. So some of it will change. I think we'll do better than where I'm thinking we're gonna end, because some things I don't reduce until it gets closer to the end of the year. As far as if the expenses are gonna even go down further. Clearly, because we had such a short season and grooming was not such a high expense this year. There is more money in the budget as far as how far we're gonna end in the black. So I'm happy to answer any line item questions if anybody has line item questions. So I'll ask that first, and then if not, or after, we'll move to the reserve section, which is the final page, and we'll go through that a little bit. Okay, You can always ask questions after too. So the reserve section, what I've done is, and I have met with the finance committee too as well. So, so basically, we added a new line item this year in reserve accounts called Vast Club Equipment. So this is adding a new reserve line that when we have a year like this, or even when we have years in the red, we've always put money in reserves, that will now be building up a fund to help clubs with equipment. So this money won't just go into that big pot of trail money that Matt has. This will actually be something that's a vast reserve account. In the past few years, there have been times when Matt has come to me and said, look, if I had $30,000 more, I'd be able to help 5 more clubs out because I could distribute it, or 4 other clubs out. And we've taken that money out of emergency reserves. So instead of doing that now, dedicating a line item specifically for that in case it's really needed. So anyway, so putting money away. So what I've done with, if you read from the left to right, ignoring the one that says ignore this as a working column. If you go to the green column, that is projected total in accounts October 1st. So that's after we move the projected reserves over. Those will be the totals of those accounts. And then the peach colored columns are because what happens is that these numbers are going to change a little bit when by the time we get to annual meeting, when the board is voting on these reserve accounts. And because those numbers change the last few years, we've done percentages. So it's just as easier to do percentages rather than a dollar amount, because it could change by the time you guys vote for the budget and things like that. And then it goes to annual meeting again for the board to vote. So, so grooming would be 19% of the total. And I'm sorry, I didn't even tell you what the total was. It's about $750,000 moving into reserves is the total. So 19% of that would be going into grooming, 5% into equipment. That's vast equipment. That's so trucks, trailers, snowmobiles. The building, that's the vast building that we own, 5%. Emergency would be 15%. The insurance company would be 17%. Disaster relief, 8%. Special projects, 4%. And then again, vast club equipment, which is 27%. So it says here 699,000 if you look at the total. But again, I'm projecting we're going to actually end closer to about 750,000 or a little bit north of that.
Cindy, I've got a question.
Absolutely, sure.
The first column, second column from the left, it just says as of May 17th. So that's what's in those current accounts as of May 17th. Correct?
Correct.
So in theory, so for grooming, well, let's just use the building. So in theory, right now there's 32,000 in there, and there will be 34,950 plus or minus, depending on what the numbers end up, correct?
No, it'll end up, there's 32 in it right now.
67, yeah.
It'll
Okay.
be 67, yeah.
Okay.
And then you'll see my notes, because we still have to move that. You guys voted to move stuff into the insurance company. We haven't done that yet. So that's that other column that says notes. So just so you know, like some of those are going to be going down, like emergency. We still have to take 300,000 out of emergency to put towards the insurance company. You guys voted on that a few months ago, but because the insurance company hasn't started yet, we're keeping that money within VAST and within this reserve account. But my totals are minus those numbers. That green column is minus those numbers that we're going to be taking out for the RRG. Because I project we'll be doing that before October 1st.
Okay, so I'm curious about the building account. I feel like I remember more in there at one point, and I know we've put some improvements into the building. How is that looking as far as in need of future repairs? Is it pretty good? I know didn't we do the roof not too long ago?
We did some patching on the roof, but we also had to dig a bunch because we flooded in the basement. So we had a lot of work done. We had the retaining wall all built up again, outside of where Matt's office is, that whole retaining wall. That all had to be dug out, rebuilt, and the foundation worked on. I think the only expense that I'm thinking of right now is patching the driveway, right? Resurfacing the driveway because there's a ton of cracks in the asphalt. I don't know how much that would cost, but I haven't gotten any bids on it or put it out to bid as far as yet, but otherwise the building's fine. We just had to have a whole HVAC system put in too within the last year, new HVAC system. So we're doing pretty well. And as far as our equipment goes, trucks and trailers and things like that and snowmobiles, we're really caught up on everything. But we will be, we're at the point this fall where the Toyota should go and get a new truck if we stay with the 5-year rotation. The Toyota's a 2016, and I don't remember what the Ford is, 2017 or 18.
Okay, and can you differentiate between what would qualify as an emergency versus disaster relief?
Sure. So disaster relief was more thought of as like Irene, something like that, where something's flooded. Like we had some floods a couple of years ago where we lost some bridges. And rather than take it out of just the general bridge repair, trail maintenance, we were able to pull some money out of disaster relief to help clubs. So that's more what disaster relief. And then emergency is something that was just unforeseen. And that could be for VAST or whatever. But it's more of a, and then because that's why we also built special projects, because special projects we've used for like years where like the GPS units, they weren't in the budget. So special projects, or if there's safety things that need, like if the safety committee, all of a sudden there's something, that's extracurricular that wasn't in the budget is what those items have been used for, but they're used very sparingly.
Okay, and has there been any, I don't want to get the cart before the horse here, but has there been any thought of using our significant surplus to offset any sort of significant increase in membership this year?
I don't understand your question.
Well,
sorry.
Go ahead, Jeff. I think you know what I'm saying.
Right now, I don't know that we're really looking at an increase in the TMA price. But that would be an option for you guys to discuss. If it comes down to that, whether we dip into a reserve or several reserves to offset the possibility of the TMA increase, if there is the potential for a TMA increase. I don't know that we've decided that, there is a need for one yet. That's kind of, I won't say it's early for that, but it hasn't been determined yet that a TMA increase is the best thing to do. We're coming off a not so great winter. Fuel prices continue to rise. So we may be better off to wait a year to do a TMA increase, but we'll see what we kind of come up with as Cindy starts putting budgets together and where some of the, working group stuff heads. But that definitely could be a possibility that we dip into one of those accounts to, not have a TMA increase, but still increase the budget.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, like I see that, like because of fuel prices, that would to me be more of like a disaster relief, or emergency or something.
Or emergency. Yep.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to get into a situation like we did 8 or 10 years ago and put a $20 surcharge in there for a year and then take it back. So, you know, I'd rather do if we're looking at if we decide to do a fuel surcharge, I'd rather see it as a 5 or 10, and then, you know, we skip a year or two on another TMA increase, but.
Right, like a one-time kind of help.
Yep, because I think that was one of the mistakes that we made, you know, back when we had that $20 fuel surcharge in there, that the next year we gave it back. So, and I think we've been playing catch up ever since.
Yeah, and I'm not necessarily, you know, proposing that now. I just want to see how kind of locked in we are as far as being able to use that money as we need to. I'm a huge advocate of making sure we've got enough in reserve and in savings. That's how I run my own finances personally. So, but obviously we've got to find that balance of, you know, making sure the membership is happy with how much we're reserving and how much we're returning our, you know, making a return on investment. So that's all.
No, and you're exactly right. And the thing about the reserve accounts, that money would still be there. It would just be sitting in the checking account. In this way, at least you're dedicating. And then you, as a board, you guys can say, okay, we need to do something this year because of this, and this is how much, and you're still leaving enough in the checking account to run the organization and still have a cushion in that. Yeah.
As some of the guys that were on the board, 10 years, 15 years ago, back just before Irene hit, we had 4 million or something sitting in reserves that the membership decided that we needed to spend. And so we did. And then all of a sudden Irene hit and we were kind of behind the 8 ball for a while. So reserves are a good thing to have, but they do need to be managed. And I think Cindy and you guys on the board are doing a pretty good job of making sure we don't get too far ahead on some of that stuff.
Jeff, Carmen's got her hand up.
Carmen.
Well, I think this question is for Cindy. I mean, this year, I mean, it's been, the last few years have been kind of weird weather-wise. I mean, realistically, if we continue like with this pattern, I mean, how long can Bass really survive? I mean, we could deplete those reserve funds, I mean, fairly quickly. Nobody knows when gas prices are you know, coming down. I mean, I just traveled through Vermont and New Hampshire today, and I literally watched gas prices like a roller coaster ride, like at different places. I mean, it's a little scary. I mean, the cost of equipment isn't going down by any means.
No, it's a good question. It just depends. You know, we've seen a pattern of good years and bad years. And our, you know, snowmobilers are very, very dedicated to the sport. I don't think that they would lose interest or start to leave the sport until you had like multiple years in a row of really, really brown winters that they would rethink or move because they're so dedicated to it. We've been fortunate that we've had these sort of good years, bad years, good years, bad years, but we wouldn't survive long. You know, if we had 3 brown winters in a row and we lost a lot of members because of it, like, do I think our membership will be down this coming year? I do not. You know, but do we need a good year? Yeah, we do. You know, at least a pretty decent one to keep everybody enthused, you know, but everybody's out there buying snowmobiles and all that. But it would only take a few years of complete brown winters for us to be out of business, for sure. And there's no way to survive that. I mean, our business is based on snow. You know, it's based on people coming and enjoying that sport. And, you know, we wouldn't be the only ones in the same pickle. So it's a good question, but it's like a crystal ball, you know, but that's how I think it would be a few years, because we've had bad winters. And then the next spring, we still had pretty much the same membership, you know, or increasing.
So you weren't looking for any kind of a vote on any of that tonight,
No.
Cindy? Okay,
Nope, nope. I'm gonna come back to you every month. I'm just gonna
Yep.
keep updating and come back to you guys and, you know, you'll discuss all the working group stuff and all that and discuss your increase in TMAs. I just want you to know where we're at money wise. So
Okay.
when you're making those decisions, you are informed.
sounds good. Resource Committee, you guys ready?
All right, I need to give Amber,
I'm trying to share without you giving me host. See if
I
that
don't
works.
know, I don't know if you can, but go ahead and try.
Oh, yeah. I am the
Okay.
host.
All right, I'm making you host. Jeff, did you want to say anything before this starts?
The only thing I want to say is jot your questions down as they're going through the presentation. Because after their presentation, Matt is going to give you an update on where we are with the working group. And then we'll entertain questions. So if you can kind of refrain from the questions until, you know, we get both presentations in, that would be great.
All right, so we'll go through this as seamlessly as we can. All right, so yeah, like Jeff said, just hold your questions till the end. That'd be great. Tim Mills' decision for the resource committee was based upon the overall fairness of the process of constructing a resource committee that would look at all sides of an issue fairly and in an unbiased way. Tim's charge for this committee was to identify the issues, identify parties to interview, which include vast staff, trails committee members, board members, and other possible experts or witnesses. 3, to weigh results of the interviews, do an independent research and analysis, including cost, expenses, and other variables. And lastly, to produce a report and recommendation to the vast board. Patty helped put the presentation together. She also helped us with all of our Zoom meetings and pretty much every other step of the way. Thank you very much to her. Matt, Ken, Beth, and Cindy provided us with a ton of data. Our focus has been on a recommendation which would provide a positive, non-biased impact with a quick implementation to the clubs. Our recommendation is a direct reflection of what we heard from all of you and your club volunteer representatives. Please note that the grooming miles discussed in this presentation represent corridor miles only. We've been working on this for about 2 years. It took almost a full year to do the Zoom meetings with all of you guys. We were able to obtain feedback from nearly all of the counties in Vermont. And we appreciate your patience and understanding as we work through it. General findings and feedback were very common across clubs and counties. Majority of clubs would like to see more flexibility to manage their grooming contracts. During the discussion with the clubs, this appeared to be a training issue to better understand how the grooming contract works. I actually didn't understand it fully until we went through it, and we've been managing our grooming contract in Grafton for a few years anyway. Majority of the clubs managed to groom to their contract or manage their grooming contract. There was discussion regarding club consolidation. Most are in agreement that it would have to happen at some point, probably more through the folding or lack of management of a club. The counties will need to work together with their clubs when this happens, and you will see some additional common findings on the slides that are coming up. Majority of clubs were more concerned with having more grooming money than to have more money for equipment.
Maintaining and grooming trails, a basic idea
but a complex process to support.
Hang on, Alice.
Yeah, that's
Did I
it.
get ahead of you?
No, next one back.
Oh, did I get ahead of you?
Yep, you gotta read that.
The vast mission statement. Sorry. Maintaining and grooming of trails, a basic idea, but a complex process to support. Vast resource community, common message. Common message from the majority of the people we spoke with, the active volunteers who put in their time and effort to make it all happen in your counties. More money, more flexibility, TMA costs not aligned with the sport. Membership.
This is.
Yeah.
Here. Oh, I got it. I'm sorry. That's all right. Since we received a couple of calls from clubs asking us to take a look at increasing the $30 membership fee. So we took a look at that. First, we know we're not really growing members. It goes up and down a bit every year, but overall, we remain about the same membership. We've remained about the same membership for years. We also know many clubs utilize membership dues as a source of income. Please note that these membership numbers only represent those TMAs where dues money is collected. 47% of clubs have less than 100 dues paying members. That's almost half of the clubs in our association. 74% of clubs have less than 200 dues paying members. And if we go a little bit higher, 78% of clubs have less than 225 members. That's almost 80% of the clubs in the association. So let's look at the club membership totals of some clubs and the contracted grooming miles they're responsible for. The chart on this page are grouped by membership numbers first, then associated contracted miles. Our sport is about trails and the mileage we maintain and groom. First column grouping on the left represents a snapshot of clubs with less than 150 members and the mileage they care for. First one on the list, you have a club with 28 members caring for 58 miles. Second column grouping, you have a club with 164 members caring for 13 miles. Columns on the right, you have a club with 1,300 members caring for 57 miles, basically the same amount of miles as the first example I pointed out, with only 28 members caring for 58 miles. As you can see, increasing membership dues is not a fair thing to do. It has no relationship to the individual club's responsibilities to the miles that they're taking care of. So going a bit further with that, the charts on this slide are grouped by grooming miles first, then the associated membership. A few examples are outlined here for you. These clubs have the same mileage responsibilities, but very different membership dues income to help support them. Two clubs with 35 contracted miles. One club has 32 members, the other 137 members with $30 dues. That's about $1,000 versus about $4,000 in membership dues. Three clubs with 46 contracted miles, 188, 273, and 49 members with $30 dues. Gives you 5,500, 8,000, and 1,500 in membership dues. Three clubs with 61 contracted miles, 73, 287, and 352 at $30 dues. Gives you 2,200, 8,600, and over 10,000 in membership dues. Two clubs with 107 contracted miles, 432 and 1,527 members at $30 dues, gives you almost 13,000 versus almost 46,000 in membership dues. This slide looks at the top 6 membership clubs and their associated miles. The top 6 membership clubs represent 33% of TMA's dues paying memberships, but only 10% of the contracted grooming miles. Chances are members who belong to these clubs ride the trails and other clubs as well. Most folks we know all won't ride just 57 miles in a day, and definitely don't ride that same 57 miles all season long. Not all clubs have the marketing ability and social media to recruit more members. The reality is, if they did, they would only be moving members to their club from another club. We basically have the same 22,000 members every year. They just move from one spot to the next.
Grooming cost estimates. What does it cost to groom? Question per mile estimates. Vast grooming rates have not increased since 2015. Paid grooming operators, 11.28 an average per mile. Without paid groomer operators, 10.50 an average mile. This analysis was done before the recent gas price increases. How do we address the problem? Membership dues increase have been discussed, but as you can see from the data we shared with you, it is not aligned with the contracted grooming miles. This brings us back to our mission statement, maintaining and grooming trails. We need to focus on the vast trail system and the financial health of our clubs. Our recommendation is something that will benefit all the clubs, and more specifically, all our contracted grooming miles, and if possible, equipment funding increases.
Reality is there isn't the needed extra income in the vast budget to do what we need in order to make a positive impact for the majority. The TMA cost has not kept up with the cost of the sport. Sure, we could argue each line, but we would never get to the number to make a positive change. Our first proposal requires $400,000 of additional income. That would require a $20 TMA increase. We've played with the numbers, keeping in mind the $400,000 budget, and this appeared to be the best way to go. The chart reflects the different classes, their current rate and miles, and then the proposed rate increase and what impact it has. The $3 is an average across all different classes. Class 1 is a bit higher at $3.60. Reading the first line in this chart, Class 1, there are 81 contracts representing 93% of all grooming contracts, covering 107,000 miles at a yearly cost of $1.3 million. The current rate is $12. Proposed rate increase of $3.60 would give you a new rate of $15.60 per mile. So what does this mean financially to clubs? We used average numbers for our example. The 39.5 is an average contract grooming mileage. The 1,086 is an average of groomed miles. Potential financial increase of $4,000 to Class 1 in this scenario. Remember, Class 1 represents 93% of all grooming contracts. We know the current grooming rates barely cover your expenses. This proposed increase should have a positive impact to all clubs who have a grooming contract.
Proposed TMA increase option 2. Option 2, Trails Committee suggested we review higher increases and associated impact. Either a $30 or a $40 increase would be needed. This option can potentially impact equipment grants. Contract grooming rates. First option outlined in option 2 is the $40 increase with a split of 30, 10, $30 for grooming rates, and $10 for equipment funds, which equates to a $200K additional funding. Class 1 would be a $5.40 per mile increase. The average overall of 4 classes would be $3.60 per mile. The second option outlined in this slide is strictly a $30 TMA increase, all going to the grooming rates with the same $3.60 average increase. The $10 additional increase from the committee's original recommendation, $20 versus $30 TMA increase, would change the average increase across the classes from $3 to $3.60. The $20 additional increase from the committee's original recommendation, $20 versus $40 TMA increase, would change the average increase across all classes from $3 to $3.60 for the grooming rate, and put $200K into the equipment funds grant. Impact examples, option 2. I can't move my page here. So what does this mean financially to clubs? We use the average numbers to our example. The 39.5 is an average contract grooming miles. The 1086 is an average of groom miles. $3.60 average payout examples are listed on this slide. $20 TMA increase, the committee's recommendation was approximately a $4K increase to the club. The $30 TMA increase reflects approximately a $6K increase to the club.
This chart is for the $40 increase option only. Option 3, $40 TMA increase with a $20 split. 20 going to the grooming rate and 20 going to equipment grants. The grooming rate would increase $3 per mile average. This is the same as the $20 TMA increase impact that the resource committee originally recommended. The equipment grant budget would increase $400,000 per year for what Matt would be able to use for equipment grants. We have a responsibility to our membership to manage our budget at the VAST level to ensure longevity of our sport. Unfortunately, VAST is not an open checkbook with unlimited funds. We put in these items as part of our proposal to help manage the business. One of the pieces is no more overcap payments. Another is grooming contracts begin when a determined snow depth is met. Once during the season, not all season long. That's just the first time you go out and groom. And this will help with equipment maintenance also and provide a level set requirement across all clubs.
Club's responsibility, $400K or $600K is a lot of new money going directly to clubs. Clubs will need to manage this money, and how they do that will be up to them. Groom before contracts begin under the recommendation of snow depth requirement. Financial responsibility is on the club. Groom more often than contract. Financial responsibility is on the club. Clubs will have the flexibility to manage how they utilize these additional funds. This is what the majority of the clubs have asked for. Additional funds from any version of TMA increase. All examples outlined in this presentation are based on 20K dues paying TMAs being sold. If more than 20K are sold, the additional funds should be allocated to trails. Each year, Matt should present to the board of directors the financial requests he has received so the board can allocate the additional funding appropriately. All funding associated with the proposed increase should stay with the trails budget items. None of this money should be allocated to reserve accounts. It should go into the following year budget line items above beyond the approved budget. Equipment grants, capital repairs, construction grants. TMA costs with proposed increases We added this chart based on Trails Committee requests. This chart outlines a different proposed TMA increases and what the impact would be to a member. Current rates are in orange. Blue represents $20 increase. This is the Resource Committee's recommendation, which keeps the TMA cost per sled under $200 and the early bird TMA purchases. Green represents a $30 increase. Gray represents a $40 increase. Yeah. Page. Option summary. Read the slide.
Oh, wait, no, you went too far.
Whoops.
One more back.
25.
I get too far ahead.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
No,
No, I got,
you're 25. You're looking for page 25.
yeah. Let's see. Don't have anything on that.
Oh,
there it
you go,
is.
right there.
Okay, sorry. Several options to select from. TMA increases $20 or $30 or $40. Does all of this go to the grooming rate miles? Does some of it go to the equipment funds budget?
Okay. I'll read that piece right there. So to recap, common amongst all of us, we all have members and we all have grooming miles. Membership dues is not a fair way to increase. We showed this data. Grooming miles is a contracted item, and addressing this quickly gets funds to the club in a fair way. This recommendation removes the emotional and personal debates regarding terrain, traffic, etc. It also brings us back to the mission statement, maintaining and grooming trails. More money for grooming. This was the #1 item mentioned at all interviews. No matter the club's mileage responsibilities or membership size, this is the fairest and easiest way to address the immediate need the club volunteers asked for. There are several TMA increase options to take into consideration. Some include increased funding for equipment grants. Management of the additional funds will be the club's responsibility. Parameters eliminate overcap and snow depth requirements for the first time out. That's not snow depth requirements for the whole season. That's just the very first time you go out. And grooming of the season first run. Any extra money goes into trails budget items. Yep, so thank you for all you guys do, and all the additional graphs are is part of the additional information that the Trails Committee asked for. If you guys flip through that and have any questions, just ask.
Well, it's time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I guess you're up, Matt.
All right, I was just waiting to make sure I wasn't jumping in too soon. I'm going to be pretty brief. So basically, what the work committee has been doing is we have taken this presentation done by the resource committee and tried to break it down a little bit further into little parts and try to put.
Matt, can I interrupt for 1 sec? Can we get rid of the presentation?
Stop sharing the screen.
Yeah. There we go. Thank you.
Thank you, Amber.
Oh, now I'm on the spot. I was hoping that screen was covering my face, but anyway, yeah, so we basically took this resource committee presentation and, like I said, tried to break it up into little sections and are trying to produce policy language for each of these items. So I know last month there was a lot of I'm trying to think of the right word. Just folks were upset or seemed upset that we had this work group, and I think there's been a feeling that we're trying to undermine the resource committee. I don't feel that's the case at all. I think we're trying to take these and move them forward into motions as quickly as possible so we can have some action here. It is a lot to digest, I will say, but a bunch of us talked about having this committee. Jeff was the one I'm not trying to put you on the spot, Jeff, but he's the one that like delegated this committee. And there was some discussion on who to pick for the committee. If you look at my report, the bottom of it, it discusses who is on the committee. We did try to pick people from different regions of the state and with different clubs, club sizes and different grooming mileage to get sort of a random assortment of people. So we've met 3 times as the work group, and some of the things that we are working on, the big one right now is equipment grants. We're trying to help more with equipment grants. That seems to be a big struggle for a lot of clubs, and a reason we feel that some clubs are trying to groom more, maybe go out earlier than they should or groom a week later than they should. So they're really trying to essentially pay for their equipment. So our thought was, okay, so let's help with equipment grants more. If that's the biggest expense, how do we do that? And how do we look at club memberships and how do we pull all these other factors into it? So we're very close to having a possible policy. It's gonna have to go through the Trails Committee and then to the board. We're honestly hoping to have that by next month, maybe. So that's a big piece we've been focused on now. Once we sort of figure that out and the Trails Committee and the board are comfortable with that, we're going to jump into some other things, which is going to focus more on grooming. We're going to look at the grooming financial analysis from this year, and also taking into consideration the rising fuel costs, and try to look at that and project out a little bit. So we're going to look at that, what we're paying per mile, which that's another big concern. So we're going to try to address that and see how that we can fit that into policy and how it works. With the understanding that if we're helping with equipment more, how much do we need to pay? Are we paying to just operate the equipment, replace it? Does depreciation come into play? That's been discussed a lot. It has been for years. So there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of pieces to this. So again, we're breaking it into pieces, trying to tackle one at a time so we're not overwhelmed. So those are some of the things. Looking at how we pay. One thing we've looked at, it seemed that clubs want more control of a grooming contract. Right now, we're sort of dictating, hey, we're only going to pay you twice a week. One thing we're looking at is just saying, all right, each club gets a pool of mileage. Use it as you need to for the year. If you need to groom 8 times President's Week because there's good snow and there's tons of traffic, go ahead, we'll pay you for it, but you only have a bank of mileage. So these are just some of the ideas, like I said, we're working on. We don't have all the details or all the, little idiosyncrasies figured out, but that's where we're headed with this work group. And like I said, we're trying to actually write it right into policy. So when we bring it to the Trails Committee, it's like shown in the policy manual, and there's not a lot of derailing of the whole conversation. We're kind of focused on this, this policy right here. And so that's what we're doing. So that's pretty much all I have. I guess the one thing I will say, a lot of what we're looking at, membership is coming into play. We're trying to figure out how we even the playing field, but certainly not hurt clubs that have a bigger membership either. We're not trying to do that because members are members and we all want members. The whole association needs members. So trying to work on that. The one thing I will say that I don't think is really necessarily the work group or the Trails Committee's focus is some of these policies and ideas, how we pay for them. I know there's a lot of talk about an increase. I know there's a lot of concern about implementing an increase this year because of rising costs of everything else, just coming off a poor winter, a lot of reasons. So that's the one piece I'm not sure we're really the ones to look at. It might be more of a fiscal committee in this board to maybe figure out what we want to do. And like some of the points brought up earlier, some of that will be based on how we finish the year, what's in our reserves and all that. We're just going to try to come up with policies that help the clubs. And then I would say work backwards into how can we pay for it at that point. If you want to call it working backwards, maybe it's working forwards. But if we have good policies that we think will help clubs, then we figure out what we need for funding to pay for it. I think that's really the right order, instead of just saying, hey, we need this increase, and then, oh, well, what are we going to do with it? So I guess that's what I have. I don't know if Brian or Jeff or anybody else that's on the working group would like to add anything. I know there's a few of you that are on here, so feel free to chime in and clean up where I left off. So
the only thing I want to reiterate is at the present time, there is no proposed TMA increase under discussion. That will if there is going to be an increase, that will come from the board once we start looking at the budget numbers. So I know in that presentation, it said proposed $20, proposed $40 increase. That is just wording. There is nothing officially proposed for a TMA increase. I just want to get that out there, get that straight, so it doesn't blow up all over Facebook again. Brian, have you got anything that you'd like to add?
No, you guys have pretty much covered it. I mean, you've explained what we're trying to, where we're trying to go, what we're trying to put together. I'm quite happy with what you've explained.
I guess now would be the time to ask for questions.
Jeff, I sort of breezed past Perry. He's on here with us tonight.
Oh, yeah, he did come back.
Sorry, anything you want to add, Perry?
No, and actually, I think you didn't give me a chance to get a word in edgeways, but that's okay. No, I think actually I want to say that I think this work group I think it's a great idea because, what we did was basically went out and dug into what, what we heard from different clubs. So that's kind of what we presented to you folks. And now it's up to you folks to figure out what to do with it. And, the work group, I think, makes perfect sense because, as Matt said, you're going to have to create policies around all of this. And so, in my opinion, where you go with this, whether or not you do an increase this year or next year or going forward, at some point, you're going to have to do something, I think. From a business standpoint, I believe that, the big comment we heard a lot was, that the TMA increases aren't keeping pace with the sport. And, from being involved in this back in the 90s, I said this a lot of times, going through this process reminded me of right where we were back in the 90s when we were struggling with the same problems. And I still think, that part of this has been, the system has been underfunded for years. And sooner or later, you got to bite the bullet. And, how you guys address that, you get a lot of things. You're coming off from COVID. You got fuel prices to deal with. I wouldn't want to be sitting on that board. I'm happy with what we did. You've got the facts, you've got the numbers, and you know what people felt.
And I want to say again that I definitely appreciate the time that three of you guys and Amber put into this. Brought to light some facts and figures that I think a bunch of us were a little surprised by. The fact that some of our smaller clubs are trying to maintain and are actually doing a fairly good job of maintaining almost as many miles as some of our big clubs. So, I think that's a testament to the quality of volunteers that we have and the dedication to the sport. So
you have a lot of great volunteers. There's no doubt about it.
Absolutely. Any questions that would like to be asked at this time? I don't know that I can see everybody, so if I don't recognize you, just kind of holler out and we'll see what we can do.
Mike Garber, Wyndham County has a question.
Okay, Mike.
Has there been any consideration about how class 1 trails are classified? Meaning if one club is grooming class 1 trails at an average of 6 miles an hour and another is grooming them at 12 miles an hour, the ease of grooming in one situation compared to another. I know it gets complicated, but has there been any consideration of breaking it down?
Not really, because one, if you're grooming at 12 miles an hour, you're not grooming. You're basically got the pan down and you're collecting a paycheck. But there's, and this will probably go to more of the discussion as we get into this. There's a lot of different opinions on what's easy to groom and what's not easy to groom. Just like there's a lot of opinions on what's high traffic, what's not high traffic. So those are some of the parameters that have, you know, endless, endless possibilities. I think the best we can do is look at case by case basis. If something's warranted as, high elevation, difficult terrain, high traffic. But our classification is basically based on the width of the drag and what the power unit is. It's not necessarily based on terrain or traffic. So that might be one of the things that we look at. Maybe we start to reclassify some of our trails, or add sub-classifications, but there's any number of different directions that we can go. But short answer to your question, no, we haven't really looked at what's easy to groom and what's not easy to groom. Obviously somebody that's climbing a mountain with a bunch of switchbacks, that's definitely harder to groom than somebody that's grooming 10 or 15 miles of rail trail or class 4 road. Anybody else?
I have some comments / questions.
Sure.
So first of all, I would like to thank the resource committee for their tremendous amount of work. That data is amazing. It's eye-opening, and it's a lot to comprehend and to process. And it'll take some time, I think, for all of us to continue to look into that. I just took a couple notes down while you were presenting the information, and I'll just kind of make some comments. One of the things that seems to be pretty consistent throughout the state, and it's not an exact science and it's not true in every case, but for most of the clubs, the more members they have, typically the more traffic that can be correlated to the amount of traffic on their trail system. And again, it doesn't work in every case. So the membership, while it might seem kind of unequal and not something that we should take into consideration, it's certainly something that has an effect on where everybody is riding. I was surprised to see how little of an increase there was in the cost of grooming, if I read the data right, with paid groomers versus volunteer groomers. That was very interesting to me. It didn't seem like there was much of a difference in cost, and I don't know where that delta takes place, whether it's because the machines are maintained better because people are being paid to do it. I don't know, but that's interesting data. I have some hesitation with telling clubs that we're going to look at a map online of snow cover to tell them when they should and shouldn't be grooming, or when they are and when they are not going to be paid. I do not have much faith in those maps, at least for real-time data and initial data that we should be using. I think if you look at them over a season's length, they're pretty helpful. But I've seen plenty of times where I've ridden in areas that have gotten that has way more snow than what these maps are predicting, and I know many other people have as well. So that kind of makes me a little nervous, and I haven't really looked at them close enough to put much weight on it, but I certainly will do that moving forward. I'm definitely not. I know that there has been no proposal for an increase in TMAs. seeing the numbers for a $20 increase certainly makes it real and puts it into a little bit more perspective on how affordable it could be compared to other winter sports. However, in the back or in the initial forefront of my mind, I am against any sort of increase to raise funds of that significance, I should say. The other thing I will add is we still have not addressed that the money. We need to address the system and where the money is sent and how it's sent there. So for example, you could have two clubs with similar contracts and even similar snowfall, but dramatically different traffic, which accounts for a lot of what their grooming is going to be. And that's not taken into account. And I know we've had discussions on how to do that, whether it's counters or a survey or something. I don't know. But I'm not seeing that in this proposal here, and that is a huge factor that needs to be taken into account. It is easy to say, well, this club only has 56 members and they're maintaining 56 miles of trail, but that 56 miles of trail might get 6 snowmobiles per week on it, or it might get 56. Maybe all 56 of those members ride, and they might ride those trails. That is nothing in compared to the 56 miles of trail in another club that might have 1,000 members that is getting absolutely pounded by hundreds of snowmobiles per day. So we need to look into that a little bit more. There was a comment in the slide about emotional and personality debates. And I've said this over and over and over again, but unfortunately, moving forward, if we're going to make any progress, we are going to hurt feelings. And unfortunately, that's going to be part of the system. Whether you're a big club or a small club, chances are good change is going to affect you. It might not be in a good way, or it might be in a positive way. So while I understand the resource committee's will to not want to allow emotions or personality debates to come into this, it is a big factor with what we do as a sport, and it's unfortunately going to potentially bring out some debates. I was happy to hear Matt say, and I liked the way that it was presented in the way that Matt came out and told what the working group was doing, what they were charged with, and it does not seem unreasonable to have a separate group work on policies. That way there's a little bit of checks and balances between the two groups to make sure one group is making the policy is kind of working with the other group to make sure that everything is jiving together. The more open grooming contracts is nice as far as managing, and I'll give you an example as to why. Last year, Drift Duster Snowmobile Club groomed, and I don't have the exact mileage in front of me. I tried looking it up, but I was focused on the presentation. Well over 3,000 miles. They groomed the most amount of miles in the state. Yet we did not cap out. This year we groomed 2,600-ish miles, and we capped out. How does that make any sense? So I believe that allowing clubs to be able to manage their own contracts might help ease some of the tension by giving the money and saying, here, manage it as you will. Now, there's always been that debate of, should the parent always give their kid the full allowance? Well, it's kind of hard. Are they going to manage it themselves well? I don't know. And maybe there are a few different ways that we can try to limit any sort of frivolous spending by snowmobile clubs, but that would also have to be looked into. So overall, I'm very happy with the presentation. It's still stuff that I have to continue to digest. I'm sure as everybody else here has to. There's a lot of stuff there. This is a very positive move forward, and I'm happy to see the direction that we're moving in. So I appreciate everybody that's put time into this, given everybody's busy schedules.
Thank you, Roger. Any more comments, questions? Julianne?
Just a quick question, because I'm like Roger in the sense, lot of information and, can we do like a group email or send an email to you to send to the committee to have our questions or suggestions to review before your next meeting?
Absolutely.
I mean, I have a lot of questions and I just want to make sure I articulate them so that they make sense. And I'm
I've
sure
seen
others
some-
feel the same way.
I've seen some of your emails with your questions. But yes, anybody that,
Hey, you didn't want one, Jeff? But, and also kudos to everybody on the committees. I know it's hard doing meetings and families and other responsibilities, and I know you guys have taken a lot of time, so I do appreciate that as well. So thank you.
yeah, anybody that, has questions that they want to forward via email, either send them to me and I'll get them out, or send them to Matt and he'll get them out to the work group and the Trails Committee if necessary.
I do have a quick question for Matt, though. I think it'll be easier for him to answer, if you don't mind.
No, that's fine. That's why he's here.
Matt, perfect. Matt, how many, or I guess, when was the last time that a club has been paid over cap? Because it seems to be, it gets brought up a lot, and although I think it's on every club's Christmas list every year, it hasn't, as far as I know, it hasn't been happening. So I don't know how much it's worth to dwell on that specific topic.
I don't know off the top of my head. It's been a while though. I would say it's probably been, this is just a guess, but like 4 or 5 years probably. And I think some of that's to do with the changing winters. It's harder for a club to really hit their cap. Honestly, with the way they've been shorter. Those caps are based on historical data from winters we had 20 years ago that were significantly more weeks than what we're having now. So it makes it harder if we're paying only the twice per week, and like running it that way. So I think there were like maybe 4 or 5 years ago that, met their weeks and went over a little bit due to a late spring storm or something. And it wasn't a lot. I think we may have paid like the one time per week over. And it certainly hasn't been a lot, not like it used to be. So I don't know if that really helps. It's not like a really accurate data. It's just sort of a guess at what.
Yeah,
No,
I can add that it has been about 4 or 5 years. I think the sort of cloud is that if everybody hit their cap, we'd never be able to afford that. And so one of the conversations is, let's look back realistically instead of looking at what happened 15 years ago regarding where caps are. Let's look at the last 5 years. Let's look at the last 6 years and maybe readjust those numbers. Because if everyone hit their cap, we couldn't afford it. Like Carmen's question before, like how long before we would be done? We would be done in one winter. And that's not going to happen because we're not going to have the snow we had 20 years ago. But that's another thing to look at is, are the caps realistic? Because snowfall has changed and it's changed in different regions.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering if it's worth, I know we haven't been counting weeks the last several years, but if it's worth maybe reevaluating contract weeks. I mean, so we haven't been counting them, but we have been counting them because we have logs.
What
did have-
my hope is,
Well, early in the conversation, when we were talking about this in the resource committee, we did talk about cutting, the season by 2 weeks. So I mean, it was part of our conversation, but we kept running up against what Cindy said was, well, if you did have a great year, you couldn't pay all the caps. So it was kind of like, do you want to? So we haggled with that back and forth, but really that's kind of up for you guys to figure. I think that's where this work group, is going to become extremely valuable when you guys are starting to analyze some of this stuff.
yeah, we're actually looking at doing away with weeks and just basically allocating a club mileage based on what they've groomed in the last 5 or 6 years. So, and the cap would be, the cap would adjust from year to year. To some extent, we would, we would keep a base mileage, so you guys wouldn't get terribly hurt if you had a low winter one year and had a great winter the next. We haven't quite worked out all the details, but giving a club a bank of mileage versus X number of miles per week that they can groom, I think is going to give clubs the freedom to realistically groom when they need to, not when they feel they have to get their payment. Because now, as you know, you need to meet your weeks and miles to get to your cap. And I think that might be where you guys missed your cap one year but hit your cap this year is you didn't have you had your mileage, but you didn't have the weeks. So all you got paid for was the weeks that you were groomed. And I if memory serves me, I think that's how that happened.
Yeah, I mean, I know exactly how it happened.
Yep.
When we got a little bit of snow, we were able to activate the weeks, packing the
Right.
trails, activated the weeks. We pulled
Right.
from it later on. And to me, that's just games that we shouldn't have to play.
Right.
You know,
And that's exactly what I'm trying to get away from, because that just makes it hard to understand how to manage your contract. So just having a pool of mileage based off your last 5 or 6 years, which would be somewhat of a rolling average as we go forward, gives the clubs the potential to manage when they want to groom and how much they want to groom. But knowing that mileage is basically their cap, what they're going to be paid for. That's the finer points of that we haven't quite worked out yet, but.
I do have a couple more questions, but I want to let somebody else speak if there's anybody that needs to.
Yeah, I just wanted to get into, I understand the mileage versus ridership. I agree that not all miles are the same. So looking at just the club counts, not totally accurate, I guess, but a good way to start. There is a couple of things in here that the Franklin group really hit hard on last time. And I'll have to keep working with them on that. And I agree with some of it too, or quite a bit of it actually. The first question was that we're asking for more monies, yet we had $750,000, or we'll have $750,000 in surplus. So is it the amount of money or the allocation of money that's an issue? I did do some more homework on the start of the season. It depends on how that's defined. When I say that, the 8 or 10 inch deal, that could cripple us big time. Depending on where you called it, I looked at it the last 2 years, it could cut 2 or 3 weeks off our season easily. So that was a big one for them that I'll be watching for. And they're also, all this puts a lot of burden on the membership. I mean, greater TMAs, greater costs, things like that. There's really nothing that, BAST is not being taxed to do anything better. And we're not trying to manage our equipment better. We're just putting it all on our membership to either less grooming or pay more, things like that. I don't know. I kind of expected to see, we had some brief discussions about trying to do a better job with our equipment, maybe reducing equipment, things like that. And I kind of expected maybe to see some of that, but there's not anything. It's just raise the TMAs and spend more money different ways. I don't know if that's sustainable either. We're already pretty high. And I know this was my first year to work the conferences and stuff. And that's one of the things that just everybody hit was how much how much Vermont costs. And I register in all 3 states up here, and we are expensive. So ain't no way about that today. So that's just going to continue. So it's just, you know, I'm going to meet with my guys Wednesday, and I know these will come up again. I'm not sure exactly, and another thing that's going to come up is when are we going to vote on this? And I can't really answer that because we haven't got it all worked out yet. But there's quite a bit of interest in Franklin County on it.
Mike, this is Mark Reeves. I just want to say, as you can see, there is no support for raising TMA costs because of some of the things you outlined. Also, they get a chance to vote on it every time the budget's proposed at the annual meeting. The budget is presented as, if you approve this budget, it will result in this amount of an impact to TMA cost. And then afterwards, the board meets to set the TMA price. So that's when they get a chance to vote on it. This is information provided through research done by this committee. And now the working group is going to take that and try to get some policies out of it. So I appreciate what you're saying, but it's been a pretty strong outpouring that there's no support at this time for raising TMAs, even though we understand what the resource committee was saying. The other thing is that some of the feedback that they got, a lot of the feedback they got sort of goes against what some of us were thinking, that there isn't a huge appetite for the way to change the way money is allocated. That a lot of people just think that instead of $12 a mile, they should be getting $14 or $15 a mile or whatever the number is, that they are fine. Now, that's not everyone, obviously, because it didn't say 100% of people said this, but that's feedback we have to take into account too, that some of our member clubs are fine with the system, but not the amount funding it. And you're right, we have a responsibility coming off a year that wasn't great, that ended with a surplus, to not raise our costs. But I haven't heard any real support for that. Just rubber stamping and saying, yep, $40, here we go. So I think you can safely tell your guys that.
And one of the things about managing the equipment better, a lot of that is going to have to come from the clubs. I mean, Matt has been trying to start a consolidation program for at least 5 years. But the clubs are the ones that are resisting it. You know, there are some areas in the state where it makes sense to take some of the smaller clubs and, you know, see if they can work together better with the resources that they have, or trade out some of the older resources that they have for equipment and bring in something newer that is a little more reliable, that they're not having to work on all the time, and you know, work together a little better. I mean, it's if we're gonna try to make changes, the changes can't just come from one side. They need to come from, you know, they need to come across the board. And I agree, throwing money at the problem isn't necessarily the solution. But as Cindy was pointing out when she was discussing reserve accounts, there is money that's being allocated across out of that 700, out of that surplus this year, to club equipment and to grooming. So it's not just, you know, it's not just going into, you know, some non-trail related account. But I think one of the other things that people need to look at when they look at the cost of riding in Vermont and the cost of riding in Maine, New Hampshire, or New York, is that we have the smallest membership out of any of those states. New York typically has 100,000 to 115,000 members. Maine is between 85 and 90,000 members. and New Hampshire is roughly 47 to 49,000. So we've got the smallest membership, and we're funded different. All three of those others are state organizations. So their funding mechanism is totally different. We are a self-funded association. So if you want to ride Vermont, you need to pay to ride Vermont. And that's where we've fallen behind a little bit, is the product that we're producing is costing us more to produce, but we're not charging enough for it. So we need to figure out ways to produce the same product, but a little more economically, I guess, which is tough with these, tough with the price of everything else going up.
Well, and I think the other thing too is, like, if you look at like New Hampshire or some of the other states, they have a certain amount they have a budget. That's it. When the money's used up, it's used up. It could be March 1st and the state will say there's no more money for grooming that's coming from us. You have to get it locally. So there's some fear base around doing that too. Like, so if we give clubs your lump sum, here you go, this is it for the season, use it as you will. What happens when 90% or 80% of those clubs are responsible and they're thinking forward, but then you have a few other clubs that don't manage it, and then they get to March 1st? Like, at what point do you, like Roger said, what point do you stop being the parent? And do you just let them go with it, and when you're out, you're out? Some clubs would be fine because they do have businesses that would support that. And then there's other regions where there's no businesses to support those clubs. So you might get a club that has no businesses in their towns and they get a lot of traffic, and all of a sudden March 1st, they're out of money because they've groomed so much earlier. So there's a lot of consideration. And I'm not saying that we should be managing that. I'm just saying there's pitfalls to all sides of it.
Absolutely.
So back to that situation regarding consolidation, I'll tell you right now, that's a conversation that was a pretty hard one to have. Most people do not want it. They're not interested in it. They consider themselves to be pretty independent. And you're going to have a real challenge, trying to bring smaller clubs over to a bigger club, or trying to condense that, because, if you do that, you lose your volunteer base. So, and along with that, some of those clubs, they're doing a pretty good job with some pretty aged equipment. And when we were talking about the equipment that was out there, Matt can give you better numbers on how old stuff is, but my guess is we're probably talking stuff that's in the, anywhere between 12 to 20 years old out there. One thing was surprising to me was there was a great number of the piston bullies that were purchased in the lease program back in the mid 90s that are still on the trails. And those machines honestly didn't have a lot of hours on them. So, do I think there was a mistake made there? Yeah, I think there was a problem. I think that program should have continued, but unfortunately it didn't. So, but consolidation is going to be hard. You're going to have to find some real willing partners to make that happen.
Roger.
I think Carmen had her hand up before me, and Julianne does too.
Okay. Carmen, go ahead.
So I really have a statement more than a question, because I have to agree with Roger and Julianne that it's a lot to kind of digest. I just one of my fears, I guess, is that one of the things that I hear a lot is we're just volunteers, and it's hard enough for us to get people to step up and to participate. And I worry that we could lose some of that, because some of the mentality that I've heard is, I don't have to do this. I could just pay to ride. And if the rate's going to keep going up here, then I'll just go ride some, like New Hampshire or Maine. And I hate to say it, but the resource committee and this working committee have done a lot of work, but in the end, it comes down to this board. when we vote. And sometimes we have to make hard decisions that not everybody is going to like. And I feel like we may be in one of those situations. Because I don't know realistically that this organization can continue to sustain at a higher level. And the fact is, if we don't have trails, we don't exist anyways. Those are just some thoughts that are kind of, I don't know, that are thrown out there, and I've had them kind of thrown at me as well. And I think it sucks, but the fact of the matter is we're not going to make everybody happy with whatever decisions made. Somebody's going to be upset, but that's just kind of the reality of life. And maybe what Vass needs to do is say, okay, here's your money. When it's gone, it's gone. And you kind of force the hand, like you're force your kid to grow up, so to speak. I don't know, just thoughts, rambling thoughts, I guess.
Definitely rambling. No, thank you, Carmen. All good points, and yeah, it will be some hard decisions to make when that time comes.
The other thing too is you could have somebody get up at annual meeting on the floor and say, we're going to increase them by $100. And if they voted in, it's up to you guys to accept it or not. So it could happen from the floor, not necessarily from you guys.
Well,
correct?
If it's voted in by the majority at annual meeting, it's not up to us. It's up to them. We'll just figure out.
Right.
We'll just figure out how to spend the money unless they detail how they want it spent.
Yeah, exactly. So that's just food for thought.
Yeah, well, you as a board have to, make these decisions, and you still have to go back to the annual membership, and regardless of whatever your thought process is to build your budget. The question is what you guys don't get in this report, okay, because you got a very condensed version of, a lot of time that was spent and a lot of comments that came out. And, I think that, the comments, there was so much talked about in these meetings. It was just, things like, landowner appreciation and what do we do about that? And trail closures and people buying land and shutting down trails from out of state. There's so many conversations. There's so much you folks have to deal with. And so going forward, it's going to be a challenge. There's no doubt. But I kind of agree with Carmen in this sense, you guys, somewhere along the line, somebody's got to grow up. And, do you give them their money and say, here's what it is. This is what you got for the year. I don't know. I think, comments, some of the comments you guys have made is, what we heard is similar, that they want to manage their own contract. So let them manage it. And in my opinion, give them the money and say, here, we hope you'll do well with this, but if you screw up, we may have to come back and revisit the situation. What harm does it do to try it once? You guys got a tough road ahead of you. I'm glad I'm not a county director.
And that was actually one of the comments I made, I think at the Trails meeting last week, is that I'm willing to give this a shot for a year or two, and I'll be the first one to admit that I screwed up taking us down this path. I see that we have some stuff that needs to be addressed. And we've been doing the same thing for a number of years, and we're not addressing it. But now we've gotten the information from Perry and Ellis and Ivor, and we're doing our best to break it down into something that's manageable. But I will be the first one to stand up and say, yep, I screwed up taking us down this path. And then we'll figure out how to fix it. But I think with the people we have, in the working group and the feedback that we're getting from directors and the directors are getting from the clubs and the general membership, I think we're kind of heading in a direction. It's a little bit of a different direction that we've been headed, and hopefully it's a better direction. Julianne. I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, well, we know that there's gonna be clubs that don't manage their contracts because we already have clubs that don't manage their contracts. So with that said, we already know we're gonna cross that bridge. So, and my other comment is, I don't feel like we've really supported Matt in the consolidation of clubs. We just had a situation in Orange County. Two of my clubs, they can't afford to keep their equipment going. And we were going to have a conversation about clubs around us picking up some of that mileage. And instead we ended up with a paid for contractor who is also going to go and get grant money. So I don't really feel like we've really encouraged the consolidation, because if we encourage the consolidations when situations like this happen in Orange County, I think we could have done a little bit better job, me included, doing a better job of encouraging the consolidation. And I've been working really hard with my president and the officers in Orange County in trying to encourage conversation with our individual clubs. You know, somebody has a piece of equipment down, who can go and run that, take care of those trails. And we've come a long way. We still have a long way to go, but as we all know, the cost of fuel and the cost of equipment, it's gonna have to happen. It's the only way it's going to be sustainable. So I feel like if we have a club that, and in Orange County, most of our equipment is old. I think we have one piece that's like a 2010, and that's one of the newest pieces of equipment in my county out of 14 clubs. So in my county, we're going to have to consolidate in order to be sustainable. And we're in the middle of the state. We connect everything. So I just feel like that's something that, you know, maybe there's something we need to do that triggers the consolidation. I don't know what the answers are, but I just feel like when the opportunity comes up, we missed the ball on that. I had another thing, but now I've forgotten it. And Mike Garber had his hand up as well, as did Roger. So.
Okay.
Can I speak to the consolidation for 2 seconds? We had 4 clubs in our area that consolidated into one, and it definitely happened at a club to club level. It's probably not the same for every area, but what we did in our area definitely would not have worked from a top-down approach. So.
Yeah, I think consolidation wise is needs to be club and county driven more than it is VAST driven. I mean, VAST is here to support the clubs. And you know, it's tough when you have a club that, you know, they take pride in everything they do. They take pride in their equipment. They take pride in their trails. And at some point in time, consolidation, I think, is going to happen as somewhat like natural selection. It will happen because it has to happen. And it's best that it be, you know, be club and county driven. Mike Garber.
I did not have my hand up.
You did not. Okay. I guess that takes us back to Roger.
I just want to piggyback what Julianne said, and actually, Jeff, you took the words right out of my mouth. Natural selection. I think what it comes down to is the best way that clubs or specifically county directors can help support consolidation is by supporting the policies that are put forward before us. And I think that the overall goal of us developing these new policies is to move the association forward in a manner that's going to benefit us as an end result. And unfortunately, it might take out some of the smaller clubs, or I won't even say smaller clubs. It might take out some clubs on its way through. but it's on us to make sure that we are, number one, building the right policies. Number two, making sure that we are supporting them on a local level and not, running the organization down and making sure that people know that this is for a reason. The resource committee earlier, Ivor said something about, clubs and recruiting and stuff. Every club has access to Facebook. Every club has access to the internet. And it's important for those clubs, no matter what size they are, to promote where they are and what they have. A great example of that is Country Riders Snowmobile Club. Nobody knew what Country Riders was or where they were or what kind of trails they had until 4 or 5 years ago, where we started hammering social media with pictures. And it wasn't even really on the club's Facebook page. It was just a couple of us grassroots guys just putting pictures out of the terrain that they have. So every club has the opportunity to do that. And unfortunately, if clubs don't do that on their own, we can't babysit them and try to promote them themselves. Nobody here wants to see the demise of any club, but unfortunately, I think that's what it's going to take to make forward progress. Just a couple other quick things I want to mention. And I would think that with the GPS now, our fear of significant abuse of the grooming contracts would be lessened, now that there is sort of a big brother kind of watching over, so that giving the clubs the contract as a package deal and say, here you go, manage it, would be a little bit better than it was, say, 5, 6, 7 years ago. The other thing that's important for the working group to know moving forward is that obviously we're changing the policies, and we're proposing and we're looking at different ways to increase revenue to improve our current operations, not to make up for the fuel cost, because those are two separate things in my head. The fuel increase and the cost of living increase, yes, it needs to be addressed, but we can't forget about the underlying issues that need to be addressed, and that's not necessarily financially driven. And then the other thing was, I didn't hear anything in the resource committee's presentation about subsidies. I was hoping for some more data when it came to subsidies. On my end, my constituents are pushing me to find out and to look into, how much are subsidies costing VAST, and how much spare change are we throwing out to clubs that they're not using. It might be a little, it might be insignificant, but I don't know that. So there's some money savings there that we have yet to tap into. And then also, I would like a little bit, just to understand a little bit better the timeline moving forward, so I can keep my county up to date. It sounds like you guys are going to be working on policies, and this is going to be digested more at the board retreat, with possible action to be taken on annual meeting day. Is that correct?
Yeah, roughly something like that. Our hope is to have something to the Trails Committee next month. We're meeting the work group is meeting May 31st. And then we're going to meet, our next scheduled meeting would be an hour before the Trails Committee meeting. But we're close to having policy for equipment grants for the Trails Committee to look at and approve, and then bring to you guys at the June meeting. And we're kind of roughing out the grooming stuff right now. And hopefully that would be possibly to the Trails Committee in July is an early time frame for that. That one may take a little more discussion, but we're hoping to have, we're hoping to have this stuff done, prior to season start, so we can, get on with the new changes.
And when is the next Trails Committee? Is that the Monday before the board meeting?
Yes, in June.
Okay, so the 20th.
Yeah, sounds good. Don't have a calendar in front of me, but yeah.
That meeting is going to be on the 20th.
Thank you, Brian. So just to reiterate, any questions that you guys might have, or even if we've got people on the live stream that have questions that they'd like to get answers to, email them to me, email them to Matt. Either one, and we'll see if we can get some answers for you. So we're closing in on 8 o'clock. Actually, we just passed 8 o'clock. So if there's nothing else on this, I think we've covered quite a bit of ground right now. I think we ought to keep moving on with the agenda. Where are we at? Oh, we are down to administrators reports, trails administrators. Anything? Go ahead, Cindy.
The only thing to add is to let you know that Ken has a baby daughter, and she was born 2 days ago, and her name is Phoebe, and she's a little peanut. She's only like 5.5 pounds, but everybody's home and safe from the hospital. And so anyway, so he's not here, but Matt and I are taking over the responsibilities of the LVRT. You know, for now. Ken will return in June.
Congratulations, Ken.
Excellent.
I wanted to jump in too, and I'm sorry I didn't notice this before, but I was actually just looking at the agenda. We have a couple of motions we need from the board that were in my report for
oh yeah,
for the Trails Committee class upgrades and things. I was just like, oh, well, I totally blanked it, so sorry.
Yep.
But it's in my report, so I think we could approve it as part of my report, probably. I don't know. It's not outlined in there.
I think we can do a brief description of each one.
It's pretty simple. If you look at my report, it's almost the next to last page. Special May meeting. So the Lunenburg Polar Bears. The Trails Committee made a recommendation to the board that the Lunenburg Polar Bears Class 4 contract upgrade to Class 3, and that is look at their contract here, 14-mile contract from Class 4 to Class 3. No construction cost or anything else. It's just going to be an upgrade. Canyon Border Riders, there was a request to add 3 miles of trail to their 93-mile Class 1 grooming contract. The Trails Committee recommended the board add the 3 miles to their contracts. And Chester Snowmobile Club had an addition of 2 miles of trail to their 57-mile Class 1 grooming contract. The 2 miles of trail leads down to a restaurant that's there, and the Trails Committee recommended that the board approve the addition of this 2 miles of trail. And again, I apologize for not catching that earlier. I looked at the agenda last week and
I had forgotten all about it myself.
Well, we had nothing else going on, so.
No.
So you just need a motion from someone to approve those 3 things all at once. You can do it all at once, right?
We can
To make
do it all.
clean.
Yep, we can do it all at once, or we can take them individually, whichever the board would prefer.
Hey, Matt, I got a question. Just regarding the Chester Snowmobile Club, I'm assuming that was recommended because it goes to a service. I just was curious as to, it seems like in the past we have, not really done that to dead end trails. So is it being like added? It's obviously being added into their grooming contract, correct?
yeah, and it goes just to a restaurant. And I guess the restaurant's actually applied for a permit to have fuel next year, potentially, whatever permitting they have to go through. So they're going to actually put fuel pumps into potentially. I think of the name of the restaurant. I thought I had it on here, but I don't see it. It's in the minutes.
Revival Kitchen.
Revival
It's the
Kitchen.
Revival
Revival Kitchen, yep.
Yes. Yeah, I
That's,
guess they have good burgers and stuff from what they said. So, yeah, it is a dead end trail, but it goes to the restaurant directly into their parking lot.
Okay, and that doesn't cause any issues with you moving forward as far as other clubs looking to get dead end trails added to their contract and you running into an issue of past practice and all that stuff, correct?
No, I don't really have an issue. I mean, I think the services are a good amenity on the trail for the members. Definitely, everybody plans their ride around their lunch, so I think it's a good thing.
and,
Okay,
and fuel is an issue in that area.
okay. Well, that being said, I would like to make a motion that we approve all three all three changes, the trail upgrades and the mileage additions proposed to us in the Trails Administrator's Report.
And a second?
Second.
Who was the second?
I second.
Okay, John, thank you.
Doesn't matter.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. And you'll let those clubs know, Matt?
Yes.
Thank you. Was that all we had out of the Trails Committee meeting?
Yeah.
Any other questions for Matt on his administrator's report? Okay, Northeast chapter. Nothing, nothing new on that front.
Nope.
What do we got? Snow Trails Conservancy. Jim?
Nothing new.
Okay. Law enforcement? Cindy?
Nothing.
Okay. I'm cruising right through these. Lamoille Valley Rail Trail, that was covered in Ken's report. Awards and nominating.
There we go.
Here we
Okay.
go.
There we
Another
go.
20
Two quick
minutes.
things. No, this is quick. I got 2 line items. That's it. For the awards portion of it, the package of the nominations has been sent to all the committee members, and Mandy put that together. So thank you to Mandy. And we are scheduled as a committee to meet the first week of June to discuss and select our award recipients. On the nominating portion of that committee, all the current VAST officers have declared that they will be seeking re-election. That's it.
Have we decided on a time for that awards meeting? I know we talked about 4, but there's a governor's
Yeah,
council.
I
that
have to
same
move
day.
it out a half hour. Yep.
So 4:30?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have to send a new thing. All my vast emails were going into my junk. Something happened. So I've been out of communication for about 2 weeks.
That's all right. And we know you've had things going on. Weddings and knees and all kinds of stuff. Thank you, Patty. Bylaws and policy. Mr. Reed.
Cindy and I are going to sit down and go through the bylaws after she wraps up the budget to propose. So we're just waiting on that.
Okay. Just a reminder that any bylaws changes need to be warned ahead of time.
Yeah,
For annual meeting.
no, we have that deadline
Okay.
in our thought, in forefront of our head.
Yep, I figured. Just, okay. Annual meeting, John, any updates?
Yeah, we're just cruising right along, checking things off the list, and things are looking really good. So nothing really new to report, but we're looking for a very successful Northeast Kingdom annual meeting.
Good deal. Looking forward to it. Let's see, where are we now? Annual meeting, nothing for executive committee. Financial, I think we got that pretty well
Yep,
covered.
Cindy covered all that. Yep.
Long range planning, Mark?
Apparently we have a board retreat to plan. So we'll be getting into that. I expect relatively soon. But that's it for now.
Okay. Resource Committee, we heard from them earlier. Let's see, Personnel, Julianne.
I'm happy that we got that in place for Ken and the weigh-in. And I think Cindy's evaluation is the only thing on my plate
Okay.
right now.
Let's see. I'm running out of daylight. That's why I'm having a hard time seeing. Trails, Brian, anything for trails?
I think it's pretty well been covered tonight again.
Well, we'll let you come up with something one of these days. Safety, Stan, you still with us? I saw him on here earlier. I don't know if he's still here or not.
He's on his way home from Denver, Jeff, so he may not be
Okay.
on anymore.
I saw him pop on earlier and I don't see him now.
We didn't meet this month. We'll meet next month.
Okay, thank you, Pat. And Governor's Council.
Governor's Council reviewed the proposed FY23 SSTP budget. There were no major issues with it, and we'll be moving forward to approving it at the June meeting.
Sounds good. Any other business to bring in front of the board? Any other comments, questions about anything tonight? Hearing nothing, I would ask for a motion to adjourn.
Windsor County make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you, Doug. In a second.
Second.
Thank you, Roger. Orleans. All those in favor? I know you all want to get out of here.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.
Take
Have a
care.
good night. Bye.